Imagine you own an airport. Not a stake in one, not a management contract, but the whole thing. The runways, the terminals, the parking garages, the air traffic control tower, the duty-free shops, the rental car counters. You stand at the window of the executive office and watch the planes land. Every arrival is a customer delivered to your doorstep. Every departure is a transaction. It looks like the ultimate toll booth. A piece of infrastructure that the world cannot function without. Then you look at the balance sheet and realize that owning an airport is not owning a toll booth. It is owning a city that never sleeps, staffed by thousands of people, encased in concrete and regulation, and dependent on a handful of airlines that can leave whenever they want. The fantasy of the airport owner is passive income from moving metal. The reality is active management of a complex, capital-hungry beast where the cost of keeping the lights on can consume the revenue before the first passenger walks through the door. To understand this business, you have to stop looking at the planes and start looking at the structure beneath them. The legal permission to operate, the cost that appears before any revenue, the contracts that control the owner, and the one number that decides whether this asset is building wealth or quietly burning cash. The first thing a new owner discovers is that revenue comes in two distinct streams, and they are not equally valuable. The first is aeronautical revenue. This is the money from the airlines themselves, landing fees, parking charges, and passenger facility charges. This is the direct price of using the infrastructure. It is the toll. But here is the problem. These fees are heavily regulated. In the United States, the Federal Aviation Administration caps passenger facility charges at $4.50 per segment. The airport cannot simply raise the price because demand is high. The price is politically sensitive, contractually negotiated, and subject to oversight. The airlines, who are the airport's primary customers, are also its most powerful adversaries. They have immense bargaining power. They can threaten to reduce flights, move to a competing airport, or simply pass the cost back to the passenger in a way that makes the airport look greedy. Aeronautical revenue is the foundation, but it is a foundation with a ceiling. The second stream is non-aeronautical revenue. This is the money from everything else: the retail shops, the restaurants, the duty-free stores, the parking garages, the rental car concessions, and the advertising. This is where the real profit is made. A passenger waiting for a flight is a captive consumer. They have time to kill and money to spend. The airport owner is not just a landlord. They are the operator of a high-end shopping mall with a built-in audience of millions. The margin on a cup of coffee is significantly higher than the margin on a landing fee. The rent from a luxury brand boutique is more predictable and less contentious than the fee from an airline. Over the last decade, airports have aggressively expanded these commercial operations. They have realized that the path to financial resilience is not through charging airlines more, but through getting passengers to spend more once they are inside. But before the owner can collect a single dollar from a passenger or an airline, they must pay for the privilege of existing. The cost structure of an airport is brutal and unforgiving. The most dangerous cost is not labor or utilities, though those are substantial. The most dangerous cost is the cost of capital and maintenance. An airport is a massive, aging piece of infrastructure. Runways crack and need resurfacing. Terminals need expansion. Baggage handling systems break. Air traffic control equipment must be updated. These are not optional expenses. They are required by law and by the basic physics of keeping a facility operational. A single runway can cost tens of millions of dollars to repave. A new terminal can cost billions. The owner must constantly pour money back into the asset just to keep it from falling apart and losing its operating certificate. This is the capital expenditure trap. You invest a fortune to build the airport, and then you invest another fortune to keep it running. The financial reality of this is stark. The global airport industry, as measured by return on invested capital, has struggled to earn its cost of capital. In recent years, the return on invested capital for major airports stood at around 6.3%. That is below the weighted average cost of capital, meaning the industry, on average, is destroying value. It is not generating enough profit to justify the money invested in it. This is the central tension of airport ownership. It is an asset that is essential, monopolistic in its local market, and yet financially mediocre. Why would any serious capital want to own it? The answer lies in the legal environment and the contracts. The airport is not just a piece of land with runways. It is a legal entity with a set of exclusive rights. The most important right is the right to operate. In most of the world, airports are owned by the government. They are public utilities. But, in the last few decades, a wave of privatization has occurred. The British government privatized the British Airports Authority in the 1980s, raising around £1.2 billion. This created BAA, which owned Heathrow and other major UK airports. The privatization was a political and financial event. It transferred the burden of capital expenditure from the taxpayer to the private sector. For the new owners, it was a chance to own a regulated monopoly. The law did not allow a competitor to build another airport next to Heathrow. The law granted BAA a protected market. This is the key to the economics. The airport owner is buying a license to be the sole provider of a critical service in a specific geography. This is not a free market. It is a regulated concession. The owner must negotiate with the government, the airlines, and the various tenants. The legal framework dictates what the owner can charge, how the owner must spend money, and what safety standards must be met. The law is not paperwork. It is one of the walls around the cash flow. It protects the owner from competition, but it also limits the owner's ability to extract maximum profit. Consider the power of the concession agreements. The owner does not operate the duty-free shop or the car rental desk. The owner leases the space to concessionaires. These are long-term contracts that guarantee a stream of rent. The owner is a landlord. The skill is not in selling perfume. It is in negotiating the percentage of sales, the minimum rent, and the exclusivity clauses. A well-structured concession agreement can turn a volatile business into a stable one. A poorly structured one can leave the owner exposed to the failure of a single retail partner. But the greatest risk is not in the contracts, it is in the demand. Air travel is a discretionary expense. When the economy slows, businesses cut travel. When a pandemic hits, travel stops entirely. The airport owner has massive fixed costs. The runway must be maintained whether 100 planes or 10 planes land. The terminal must be heated and staffed. The debt must be serviced. When passenger numbers drop by 50%, the airport's revenue does not drop by 50%. It drops by much more, because the high-margin, non-aeronautical revenue evaporates. The captive audience disappears. The shops close. The parking lots are empty. The owner is left with a massive, empty facility and a mountain of debt. This is what happened during the financial crisis and again during the pandemic. The industry was hammered. Airlines went bankrupt. Airports became ghost towns. The owner, who borrowed heavily to expand, found that the debt did not care about the pandemic. The lender still wanted their payment. This is the structural fragility of the asset. It is a high fixed cost business, dependent on a volatile, cyclical demand. So why does serious capital want to own an airport? Because if you survive the cycle, you own a piece of irreplaceable infrastructure. The value is not in the annual profit, the value is in the asset itself. The land under a major airport is worth a fortune. The strategic importance of the location is priceless. You cannot replicate Heathrow. You cannot build a new JFK. The barriers to entry are absolute. The regulatory approval, the environmental impact studies, the political opposition, and the sheer cost of land make it impossible for a competitor to emerge. The airport owner has a monopoly on a critical choke point in the global economy. This attracts a specific type of capital, long-term, patient, and willing to accept a lower return in exchange for safety and inflation protection. Infrastructure funds, pension funds, and sovereign wealth funds love airports. They are not looking for a quick flip. They are looking for a 30-year asset that will generate steady, predictable cash flow and appreciate in value over time. They are buying the right to collect a toll for the next generation. The return on invested capital may be mediocre, but the return on the asset itself, through appreciation and refinancing, can be substantial. The owner is not an entrepreneur. The owner is a steward. The job is to manage the relationship with the airlines, the regulators, the concessionaires, and the passengers. It is to navigate the political landscape. It is to plan for the next economic downturn and the next technological shift. It is to keep the runways safe, the terminals clean, and the debt manageable. Owning an airport is not about the romance of flight. It is about the reality of concrete. It is about permits that expire, contracts that can be breached, workers who can strike, lenders who must be paid, and equipment that can fail at the worst possible moment. It is a business that demands enormous capital, tolerates thin margins, and rewards those who can endure the cycle. The airport owner looks out at the tarmac and sees not a symbol of freedom, but a balance sheet full of depreciation, a schedule of debt maturities, and a map of political constituencies. It is a fortress of cash flow, built on a foundation of law, guarded by regulation, and perpetually under threat from the sky.